By Jaga! The Thundercats are back, and they're finally on the move. Thanks to Super7, after years of being stuck in limbo, Thundercats Classic has been reborn as Thundercats Ultimates. At the moment, it's March 2021, and it's an exciting time. Super7 has revealed their gigantic Thunder Tank, and now's as good a time as any to take a look at Wave 1. If you missed out on Wave 1, you're in luck. Super7 has made Lion-O and Panthro available again for pre-order, just in time to go with that Thunder Tank Classic if you want to pre-order that too. That way, you don't have to pay aftermarket prices, and some prices on Amazon and eBay are just crazy at the moment for Lion-O. I got these way back in September of 2020, but I haven't had a chance to review them yet because I've been busy making a ton of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle reviews and Ghostbuster reviews, so check those out. I really like these Thundercats Ultimate toys a lot, and as a huge Thundercats fan, I hope this line can reach the same depths of obscurity that Masters of the Universe Classics reached. So I am going to cover and review the Lion-O Ultimates figure, but first I got to make a couple of tangents here and just explain a little bit about the Ultimate series, some of my opinions on it. And so, if you want to skip all that, just look in the chapters down below in the description and you can find where you want to go. And, when I do the Panthro, Jackalman, and Mumm-Ra videos, they will just mostly be reviews. You won't have all this extra stuff before them. I've always been a huge fan of the Thundercats cartoon. Much like DuckTales, I think the show perfectly captures excitement and adventure. I still watch it now. It kind of gives you the same feel of like when you were a kid and you'd walk around the forest and you'd find different things or bugs and stuff like that, The Thundercats crash on Third Earth, and we get to watch them encounter the unknown, fight evil foes, discover new lands, build their fortress, meet new friends, I like the first 65 episodes the best. After that, I think it's a little mixed. It gets a little redundant in spots, and eventually becomes more about treasure hunting, but that's just me. I'm an animator and storyboard artist, and the visuals in the cartoon are just amazing. If there ever was a cartoon that made you want to pick up your pencil and draw, it's Thundercats. When it comes to the original toys, I have to admit, I'm out of my element. I only remember having Slythe when I was a kid, and I don't remember anybody else having any Thundercats at all. You'd go over people's houses, and they'd have tons of Masters of the Universe and G.I. Joe and Transformers, and I don't remember anybody ever having Thundercats. I don't know if it's because Thundercats just isn't as popular as those other franchises, or it's because these toys are kind of a letdown. The scale is kind of weird, and, they don't look anywhere near as good as the show. They seem a little stiff, too, or something. The He-Man toys all had the same body, pretty much, but they seem more lively or something. I don't know. There's something about them that doesn't seem as uptight, or I don't know how to put my finger on it. What do you think? I mean, in my opinion, though, Thundercats definitely has the better cartoon. I respect what Filmation was trying to do with their limited animation and the fact that they were trying to keep American animators working, but it's so limited. I don't know. There's certain things about it that are very specific to Filmation, and it just doesn't look as good as, I think, Thundercats. So many characters use the same rotoscoped movements, and Thundercats, they could have different types of shots. And in general, I just think it was put together really well. They have beautiful backgrounds, and the animation is just way better. He-Man does have some cool backgrounds, but, they're very stylized. When you look at a background in He-Man, you know right away by the color and the style of painting that it's from He-Man or any of the other Filmation cartoons. I think it's cool, but I just prefer the look of that Thundercats has. It's more pleasing to my eye, but that's just me. Obviously, a lot of people love He-Man, so remember, this is only my opinion. Also, Thundercats didn't really beat you over the head with its morals like He-Man did. You know, as a kid, I just wanted to get past that. I just wanted to see some action. And for me, Thundercats had that. You know, it has its morals, but the morals take a back seat to action and adventure. I think it's funny that He-Man is a cartoon based on a toy line, and the cartoon never lived up to the toys, in my opinion. Much like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like, those original Playmates designs were so much cooler than the actual on-screen counterpart. But Thundercats was designed as a cartoon first, and the toys were based off of the cartoon. And in my opinion, it's the exact opposite. The cartoon is crazy detailed. Like, look at all those muscle lines. That's crazy. You'd want to, drill a hole in your forehead drawing all that. The toys, on the other hand, like, are simplified. It's weird. So, in my opinion, the original Thundercats toys don't live up to the cartoon. And like I said, I think any Thundercats toy line has a lot to live up to because that original cartoon was amazing. I love how the episodes kind of build off of each other. They're not always just like one-off stories. You'll have some of those, but in general, the seasons have a story arc, and the whole series has a huge arc. So, in my opinion, it's a little more rewarding than a lot of other cartoons at the time. So I loved it back in the 80s when I first watched it. I loved it in the 90s when I watched it on Toonami. And of course, I had to buy the DVDs. And when the cartoon wasn't enough, I even had to go out and find the cool comic books from Wildstorm. Now these are, I don't know if you remember these. These were kind of a mixed bag. Some of them were pretty good, and some of them were a little weird. Like, the return got a little weird for Thundercats. I skipped the Thundercats Bandai toys because I thought they looked a little wonky. Not to mention they never completed their line. For years I watched as Masters of the Universe Classics succeeded, and I was so envious. If Masters of the Universe could make a comeback, why not Thundercats? And then it finally happened. Matty Collector Thundercats Classics. They looked great. I was ecstatic. I made a huge list, my own personal list, of 50 potential characters that I wanted to see at the time. I was on cloud 9. And then the line died, and Matty Collector closed. Ah, man, things seemed bleak, and we were stuck in, Thundercat collecting limbo for a while. And for years, the rumors started circulating. Would the line continue? What would happen? Super7 got Masters of the Universe Classics. Could they continue Thundercats Classics? We'll see. And then finally, in 2019, Brian Flynn announced, yes, Thundercats shall go on. Wave 1 was made available for pre-order in August of 2019. The first 4 figures were 4 figures that we got before, which was kind of a bummer. But it was a good way to get people on board who missed the original Matty Collector figures. Plus, I like some things on these new versions more than the original. We finally got these in September of 2020. So, yeah, it took more than a year to get these. But, I was happy to wait as long as I was happy with the end result. And I'm happy. Now, before I review Lion-O, I'd like to address some Thundercats Ultimates criticisms that I usually see online. First, how late these figures are. Yeah, I get it. Nobody likes to wait for things, I do think Brian Flynn offered some reasonable answers as to why they were so late. First of all, quarantine slowed things down in China. I think that makes sense. Also, Brian had mentioned that the factory they use doesn't really prioritize them, which to me makes the most sense. Super7 decided to use the same factory that Mattel used when they made their original Matty Classics figures. The intention was to keep the same quality as those figures, but it seems like that choice kind of bit them on the butt. Super7 is not as big as Mattel, so it sounds like the factory was focused on pumping out their, larger orders from larger toy companies, essentially sticking Super7 on the back burner. Super7's orders are probably exceptionally smaller than those bigger companies, so they're not providing the factory with as much money. So I'm sure that they, don't take them as seriously or just kind of blew them off. Unfortunately, this also affected Wave 2's production, so that's really late too. Luckily, Super7 has moved their manufacturing to the same factory that is making their Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimates figures. So Wave 3 and 4 should be out sooner than Wave 2. Hopefully, really, really soon. It's a shame that they were trying to do something that seemed like a great move at the time. Like, in my opinion, that seemed like a good idea to, hold up to the original quality that Mattel had, because a lot of people kind of complained about that with some of Super7's Masters of the Universe figures. But unfortunately, it seems that this caused the most problems for the line. It also explains why some of the Matty mistakes were repeated, despite Brian telling the factory to fix certain things, like Jackal Man's reversed calves. The second criticism is the color of these figures. A common complaint is that the colors are too dark. They're darker than they appeared on the screen. And in my opinion, I like these colors. I think also, too, with some people's reviews, the way that they have the lighting set up makes the colors appear darker than they actually do in hand. Like, I've seen some reviews on YouTube where Panthera almost appeared black instead of dark gray. And in my opinion, if you have, your lighting, or you're just using regular room lighting, it doesn't appear like that. I think in some ways the darker colors help the contrast a little bit, especially with the faces. Like, if you look at Lionel here and you look at his 5 o'clock shadow, because the 5 o'clock shadow area is a lot brighter than the rest of the skin tone, it stands out more. I think it looks a little better. And plus, if you look at it in the cartoon, sometimes the episodes, I think, match this color just fine. Not every single episode of Thundercats is, 100% in line with the other ones. A lot of times with these old cartoons, they would, if they had a big giant run of 65 episodes, they would send the episodes out to different animation studios. So, you'd pick one, which is your main one, which is probably the best animation studio you're using, and, they would be the most expensive. So you'd send a decent amount of your episodes to them, but then a lot of your other episodes, you would send them out to, not as good ones, and then also, a crappy studio who was a lot cheaper, so that, you could have all these episodes come out in a timely manner, and you could save some money, and, even though you'd have quality drops, it never really felt that bad, because every other episode would be, good or okay, or, not the best. Now, you can't really rely on looking at animation cells to color these guys. Usually animation cells appear different than the actual footage you see on screen. They light the cells as they shoot them. You kind of have to make up your mind on what the color should be for these. There's no absolute, in my opinion. And, not only that, but paint changes colors in 30 years. So if you look at the animation cells, the paint has changed a bit, probably, since it originally was painted. Along with color, another thing I usually see people mention is that the eyes on these don't really match the look of the show. And, I guess I could sort of agree with that. They do sort of have, anime eyes in the cartoon. But this doesn't really bother me that much, because I'm not a huge fan of anime. So, him having regular proportioned eyes does not bother me as much. And, the Mattel ones did have those bigger eyes. I'll give them that. But, I also don't understand why a lot of people want these figures to look like carbon copies of the cartoon. In my opinion, Thundercats Classics and now Thundercats Ultimates was never, a perfect representation of what the cartoon was supposed to be. It's almost like Masters of the Universe Classics. Masters of the Universe Classics was not, a representation of the cartoon at all. You might have some characters from it that eventually came out in this series, but Masters of the Universe Classics was more of a continuation, or an upgrade of the original He-Man toys. And you're not going to get upgrades of the Thundercats toys, because they weren't the best. So in my opinion, it's just a different take. It's a reimagining of Thundercats in toy figure form. Speaking of Masters of the Universe Classics, that brings me to the third criticism I usually see about the Thundercats Ultimates toys. And, that's that they use the same buck as the Masters of the Universe Classics figures. And, isn't that the point? Isn't the point to have Thundercats toys in the same style as the Masters of the Universe Classics? If you made them considerably different, you would lose a huge audience of people who are, into this line because they want a continuation of their Masters of the Universe Classics toy line. Sure, you had your 10 whatever years of Masters of the Universe, and now you could keep it going with Thundercats, right? And a common thing I usually see is that, back in the 80s, people wanted their Lion-O and their He-Man to, mix well together, but you couldn't do it because they're, completely different scales and in different styles. So, you could play with them back then, but it just doesn't match as well as this new line, these two guys right here. So, now, if you wanted to, you can have He-Man drive the Thunder Tank. That's cool. You can pretend that, the mutants called up their buddies on planet Eternia, the Snake Man, and the Snake Man came down to Third Earth and are now battling the Thundercats. I also have to say that, I am not a big fan of double-jointed elbows and knees. I don't know, there's just something about, super articulated figures that seems kind of off to me. I would rather have limited articulation and just have the figure look nice, solid, and clean. I'll talk about this more later during the sculpt section, but the Thundercats have a very stylized muscles. They don't have six-packs, and they have a bunch of lines where their ribs should be. These figures don't have that, and I'm okay with that for the most part, because it matches Masters of the Universe Classics. However, if you do look at some of the newer figures like Monkey and Mumm-Ra, they're starting to copy that look a little bit. So I think that's pretty cool. It seems like Super7 is trying to appeal to hardcore Thundercats fans. So I get it if you have some complaints about these action figures. If you were hoping for 100% cartoon accurate action figures, you're not going to get that with these. But I do think that they made a decent attempt to try to get them somewhat cartoon accurate. To me, none of those criticisms really make that much of a difference. I still really like these. To me, the Ultimates are just a brand new interpretation of the Thundercats. They're not 100%. They've never been billed as being a cartoon accurate show. It's not like the NECA Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Fred Wolf series. It's not even called Fred Wolf series, but you could refer to it as that because they're all cartoon accurate. They're made to specifically look like the cartoon with the black lines and all that. This Thundercats line is not that. I've never taken it as that. So, like I said, I could see how you could be disappointed, but it just doesn't bother me. I'm pretty happy with how these look. Now that was quite a lot to go over, but now we're done, and now it's finally time to talk about the brand new Thundercats Ultimates, Lion-O. So, after your year-long wait, Lion-O showed up in this brown mailer box, and I think it's pretty cool. It carries on the traditions of Masters of the Universe Classics, where you just have the title, the name of the character on the front, and pretty much, that's the only thing you really care about, right? When you open it up, inside you find a box that's even more exciting. First, you got this very nice slipcover, and it's kind of tough to see the emblem there, but you got the nice Thundercats emblem. How can I do this in a way where you can actually see it? It's very, shiny red and black, and that looks great. And on the bottom, it says the character's name, Lion-O. The back just says Thundercats. And, what's cool is it says Lion-O here, but if you want to display it without the slipcover, look at that. The title stays there. Woo! So, when you take the slipcover off, you got this very nice looking box. You have a very nice big window here so you can see all the different bits and pieces inside that would be next to Lion-O. Just use your imagination. In the back, you have the white splatter that originally showed up in the original Thundercats toys from back in the 80s. And on the back here, you just have this wonderful shot of the Thundercats, this painting here, and that looks great. And of course, it says down at the bottom, Lion-O, smart, fast, skilled as a warrior. Lion-O is the prince turned king of the Thundercats. A boy when they fled Thundera. He now, as an adult, has the mind and temperament of a 12-year-old. Now, all right, so let me finish. So he has some maturing to do. His exclusive weapon, the Sword of Omens, gives him the power of sight beyond sight and makes him a dire enemy of evil Mumm-Ra. All right, so I kind of have to disagree with this. If you watch the cartoon, right, Lion-O doesn't really have the mind or temperament of a 12-year-old boy. If anything, like, he pretty much just acts like an adult. It's just that he doesn't have the experiences that he needs to be the Lord of the Thundercats. So, like, throughout the series, he's just kind of gathering experience to become the Lord of the Thundercats, you know, with the other Thundercats kind of teaching him. It's not like he's ever like, sit on it, man. I'm gonna go get some burble pizza and ride my skateboard, man. So if you don't know, in the first episode of the Thundercats, Lion-O starts off as a little boy, and Jaga rudely sends Chitara in to wake him up so that Lion-O can come into the main room of the ship, where Jaga shows him a screen and says, "Look, Lion-O." And on that screen, a planet explodes, and Lion-O's like, what was that? And Jaga's like, "That was our home, Lion-O." Like, could you imagine if somebody woke you up and was like, you remember where all our family and friends were? They were down there. They're all dead now. So after that, the Thundercats get attacked by the mutants, and you know, their navigation system is damaged, so they don't have much maneuverability with their ship, and they have to land it on Third Earth, and that's, you know, some distance away where they have to sleep in suspension capsules. And the deal is that some aging does take place while they're sleeping in the suspension capsules. So on their trip, Lion-O grows into an adult, and he has to be taught how to be the Lord of the Thundercats. But like I said, he's mature. He doesn't want to play with any of those little toys that Snarf is trying to hand him. And yeah, he just pretty much acts like an adult, and like him being a kid is kind of like an afterthought. Like I said before, the sculpt of Lion-O is very similar to the He-Man sculpt for Masters of the Universe Classics, which is, you know, perfect, because not only are you getting a Thundercats line, you're also sort of getting a continuation of Masters of the Universe Classics. You can see that they really reused a bunch of parts here, like, you know, the shoulders are the same, the biceps and the triceps. Even like the muscle definition here and here is sort of the same. If you look at the upper torso, you can tell that this is just kind of like a modified version of this by the muscle definition and even like the little markings in the neck. It's like they kind of just took this original design and added these straps and chopped his nipples off. Like, his legs are pretty much exactly the same, and then you just have different boots. I really like the muscle definition on this guy. I think it seems very plausible. You know, I think there are some toys out there where the articulation sabotages the overall aesthetic. Weird bits and pieces and cuts all over the place. So while some might prefer like tons of articulation, I prefer simple articulation, especially with these guys. While the Thundercats are cats and felines, I never thought of them as like super dexterous. Besides like Chitara, to me they're like Conan in cat gear. So they're more warrior than ninja, despite Panthro being sort of like a ninja. But here's your articulation here. You have a ball joint for the head, and you have removable heads for Lion-O, so you can easily pop that off and put the new one on. In the shoulders here, you have rotation, and you also have hinges. So that's good. You have a bicep cut. Now, sometimes that kind of gets in the way a little bit when you're trying to turn it. It just depends on how you're doing this. See, the triceps can't really go under there too well. You have single jointed elbows, which I'm fine with. And then you just have rotation and hinges in the wrist. You have an ab crunch. Now, some people have said that there's like too much of a gap here between the ab, like the upper torso and the lower torso. I don't think it's as noticeable as maybe, I don't know, the original Lino, I guess, was sort of similar. It just depends on how you look at it, how noticeable it is. He does have a swivel waist, or, he can rotate in the waist there. His hip joints have a hinge, and there's also a thigh cut up here, so you can rotate that around. So that's all good. You can rotate it front and back, although this his underwear piece kind of stops it a little bit from going too far. It'll be kind of interesting what you're supposed to do when you're trying to put him in the Thunder Tank. You have single jointed knees, and you just have a boot cut here, so you can rotate there. And you have hinges for the ankles, and the ankles also have ankle rockers. You see, now, like these things, like the underwear here, this is kind of like a cover. All of these figures have that, and I don't know if that's how the original Masters of the Universe Classics figures all were too. But you just have this little piece here, and it kind of moves around. If anything, the one that came on the Hasbro one kind of covered it up a little more. I don't know. Just a little bit. So let's take a quick look here at Cartoon Lino. Now, as you can see, the muscle definition is very stylized. In my opinion, the muscles in the cartoon are almost as iconic as the costumes they wear. Like, you see those muscles and those lines, and you're like, yeah, that's a Thundercat design, all right. Man, could you imagine being those animators and you get the model sheet and you'd have all these extra lines? You'd be like who? Why would you do this to me? This is like sadistic. Some of these lines are a little strange. Like, you have those little extra lines around the ribs, and then even a lot of times you have those extra lines going down the middle of the bicep. I don't know if that's supposed to make the bicep look 3D, like it's kind of figuring out the shape or something like that, or if it was like meant to be like some kind of actual fold in the muscle. I don't really know. So, like, a lot of these shapes look cool, but they don't really work, I guess, in the real world because they're stylized. I think if you come back to the toy now and you look at the way that the muscles are done on this makes more sense, I think, in 3D than those Thundercats muscles do. Like, you don't have all those extra lines, but you just have, like, natural human anatomy on the ribs and the pecs. Even the back here, is more of a realistic back. If you look at Lino in the cartoon, the back does have, like, sort of stylized muscles. So I just think that, like, if you try to translate the cartoon design into a 3D object, like a toy, and then put it next to, like, your He-Man figures, it would just look a little strange. Like, of course, you could maybe say that, like, they're a different kind of species, so they have these different muscle groups, but I don't know. I think that by using a regular human anatomy for these action figures, I think it does a better job making these toys seem real. So overall, Lino, I think he's got a really good sculpt. I think this action figure looks great. Nice and sturdy, and looks like he kicked the crap out of some of your other action figures. And, of course, we've already seen this sculpt once before because it's the same exact sculpt that Matty used whenever they had their Thundercats Classics line. So what are the big differences here between the Super7 Lino and the Matty Lino? Well, for one, the colors are a little different. On the Matty one, they're a little brighter, but I don't know. There's hardly any difference if you look at this in the light. Like, they are very similar. Now, if you can't really tell, the skin tone on this Lino is just a little brighter than this one, and I think maybe even the blue, one of them is a little brighter than the other one. The big difference here is that, Super7 here has pretty dark hair, a lot darker than this, and their skin color, like I said, it's dark enough that the lighter tone on the skin stands out more. But in my honest opinion, I prefer the Super7 colors because I think it makes that stand out more. I think that contrast is needed. I kind of felt like the way that this face looks was way too soft. Not to mention that they really, did a crappy job here of painting where his hair connects to the face. Like, look how sharp this looks. I don't know, I just prefer this. I think this looks a lot nicer. You know, the eyes are smaller than the Matty ones, but I just think it looks really good. I think that maybe the one thing that Super7 doesn't have going for it is that the 5 o'clock shadow area should come up to where his nostril is. The Matty one does have that. This does go up to the nostril. But like I said, it just looks so soft. It looks, I don't know. Everything about this is sharper, and I just like this a lot more. The brand new Super7 Lino does come with an extra head, and I really like this head. At first when people saw pictures of it, people were like, hey, it kind of looks like Lionel's taking a dump. But in my opinion, I think he looks great. He looks ferocious, especially in person. He looks like he's mad and he's going to chop up the mutants as much as he can, right? And one thing to point out here is that the 5 o'clock shadow does go above his nostrils like it's supposed to. And like I said, I really like this one a lot. And, here is, sometimes, like, some companies, when you get something and you have a problem with it, you contact them and, they'll tell you that they don't have any more, or, it'll take a really long time to get it. And here's a cool experience I had with Super7, right? I originally got this head, and it has this mark on the chin, right? And sure, yeah, it looks kind of like battle damage, like he got cut or something like that, but it's like, I was like thinking like, what, I paid $45 for this, like I want it to look perfect. So I wrote Super7 an email, and within like a day, they got back to me and were like, oh yeah, we can send you another one. And literally within a week, I had one that was in pristine condition. The emblem on the Super7 Lino looks a lot nicer. For one thing, it's actually centered, and it looks a little closer to the cartoon than this one on the Matty version. However, the little yellow dots around the emblem are sharper on the Matty one than they are on the Super7 one. So I'll take the messy dots with the better emblem any day of the week. The brand new Super7 Lino also comes with a lot more hands, and these hands are a brand new sculpt. They look, and they're actually a lot nicer than the old Lino hands. If you look at the old Matty hand, in my opinion, it's a little too small for Lino, and it just looks kind of warped. Like, look at the way the fingers wrap around. They don't look natural, where here you can see knuckles and stuff like that. The fingernails look a little cleaner. And, just the palm of the hand, the details in here are just fantastic. It actually looks like a real hand that would be holding a sword, where this just kind of looks, it's good, but it's just a little misshapen. The biggest problem with the gripping hands is that they give you, like, 2 of each for some reason. Like each hinge goes the same direction. Like, if they would have given you the same right, like 2 of the same right hand and 2 of the same left hand, but change the hinge so that, it would bend this way instead of this way, that would have been a lot better. You may not think that it makes much of a difference, but I don't know. I just think that this hand looks a little more powerful and more proportionate to the rest of his body, and this one is just a little too small. Lino also came with a set of, like, claw hands or bigger gripping hands, and I think these are good for, making expressions or holding larger items like the Book of Omens. Okay, so just like the original Lino, this brand new Super7 Lino also comes with a furry claw shield. The biggest difference here is that the little emblem on the inside of it is actually painted. On the original on the original Matty ones, they were not painted. Also, the clip that connects the one that's supposed to sit on his body has been painted blue instead of gray like the original one. Unfortunately, the way that this hole was designed, the bigger part is on the outside and the smaller part is on the inside, so you can't really fit this on the actual belt, but chances are you're probably going to use the smooth claw shield anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Despite not being the smooth claw shield, I do kind of like this. Like, it's just kind of, I think, an extra cool, like a cool little touch. And I never really thought that much about it when I got the Maddie one. I didn't really feel negatively about it or positively. I just thought it was kind of cool. And you know, if you're like wondering, like, why would they make a furry claw shield? Like, what was the point of that when in the cartoon it's, you know, it's smooth? And my guess is that when they originally made these Thundercats toys, maybe they were just trying to aim it to be like an upgrade of the original toys. Because if you look at the claw shield from the original LJN Lino, that very much looks like a furry claw shield. So I'm pretty sure that that's what they were doing. So like I said, it's not 100%, you know, cartoon accurate, but I think it's cool. He still looks cool when he's wearing it. Luckily, if you don't like the fur claw shield, they gave you the smooth claw shield, just like the cartoon. I mean, look at these. These look just like the cartoon. You got the 3 fingers, and, you know, even the way that the sculpt on this looks, how you have this little, these like ridges or whatever, it looks just like the cartoon. Check that out. Even on the inside here, you can see you got that little symbol or whatever it is, and it's painted black, just like here in the cartoon, right? It's very easy to replace the claw shield or, you know, change it out with the hand. So you just pop the hand out and you have a little peg in there and you could pop it in. The claw shield didn't actually show up until the 2nd episode, The Unholy Alliance, and Tigra gave Lino the claw shield. Now, in the cartoon, when Lino is almost ready for battle, but he's not ready in attack mode yet, he'll walk around with his claw shield on, and, you know, he'll just, instead of holding the sword, he'll have that sword plugged into the claw shield. And unfortunately, the one that fits on his arm, the sword will only go down this far, and really the sword should go down far enough to where the Eye of Thundera should be kind of in that little, you know, space right there. Now, if you have the Sword of Omens from the Maddie Collector Lino, it does go in a little further, so it looks a little better, but in general, that sword doesn't look as nice as the new Super 7 one, but more on that later. So you do have the extra claw shield that can actually strap onto his belt, which is great, because lots of times in the cartoon, Lino, you know, just walks around with this thing strapped on his belt, and the hole is set up the right way, so bam, right in there. It's perfect. And where's it at? If you have the Super 7 short sword and you plug it in there, it actually goes down far enough to where it should be. The short Sword of Omens is just so much nicer, I think, than the Maddie one. Like, this one looks kind of soft, and the details are just, I don't know. It's just kind of like they put it together but didn't do it as good of a job as they could have. All the details on this look nice. I mean, it looks just like the cartoon. It's very sharp. I love the way that the circle around the eye looks. It's so much cleaner. Just the proportions of the blade to the eye. It's just very well done. I don't know, if you just like look at the colors inside of there, it's like everything is sharper and it looks really good. And you know, I think it's clear as day that the brand new Super 7 short sword looks a lot better than the Maddie one. So now you have the bigger sword versus the other bigger sword, and man, this new Super 7 one is so much nicer than this Maddie one. First of all, look at the size of the blade on the Maddie one. Like, you know, it was fine. Like, at first this was fine, but now that I got the Super 7 one, it's so much better. Like, the proportions of the blade and this little mark here just looks so much nicer and so more accurate to the cartoon, even though, like I said, I'm not going for 100% accuracy to the cartoon, but it looks way better as the Sword of Omens. Once again, all the details in the hilt and in the handle are a lot sharper. They look good. The ring around the Eye of Thundera, or the Thundercats emblem there, is way better. It just looks structurally so much nicer than the Maddie one. And, you know, even like these wings here, they actually create the little holes here so that you can make Lino do sight beyond sight. See, I think that looks really great. Like, that looks awesome. You got that pose almost perfectly. And, you know, if you turn him, look how close he has that sword to his face. Like, you know, he might not have super articulation or whatever, but, I mean, you can get that really good. Just like in the cartoon. The only difference is in the cartoon, it looks like, you know, they drew the sword a little smaller here, but whatever. Finally, Lino comes with the Book of Omens. Now, what's the Book of Omens? Well, the Book of Omens is a treasure of Thundera, and inside of it, it has all the secrets of the Thundercats, and, you know, I think the sword of the Eye of Thundera and stuff like that. Only, in order to get the secrets, when you open up the book, you're actually transported to a different dimension where you have to talk to the guardian of the Book of Omens. And if you don't have the key of Thundera, which came with Panthro, and I'll talk about that later on in the Panthro episode, he'll actually sick fire-breathing dragons on you, which is pretty cool. So here's the book in the cartoon, and, you know, it looks just like the toy. It's awesome. So, all in all, like, I love this Lino. I think it's great. I think since 2016, we've seen a lot of improvements here. You got better hands, better swords, an extra head that looks ferocious, a really awesome Book of Omens, and then you also have the smooth claw shields. And before I go, let's take a look at the original Lino figure. You know, it's pretty amazing how this new Lino is roughly the same size as this guy, and it's just, like, so much nicer. It's like, look how much toys have evolved in almost 40 years. Can you believe that? Man, I feel pretty old. But yeah, like, everything about him, I don't know. It's just, I think it's really great. Oh my gosh. I'm kind of getting glad where we don't really live in a world filled with action features anymore. Like, you know, this stuff was cool when you were a kid because you could do stuff with it, but it did kind of, like, ruin the aesthetic of the guy. And even this kind of tab, like, I wish more that he had a hole there that you could plug the claw shield into instead of always having this thing sticking out. I will say, though, that the shape of the original Sword of Omens from the original toy is closer to the cartoon than the Maddie Sword of Omens. So I think that the Super7 one, you know, is obviously better than this original one, but I don't know. It's still cool to see it. So, that's all for Lino. You know, I'm a huge Thundercats fan, so I can't wait to get more. You know, I'm dying to see Wave 5. And, you know, since I covered so much of my opinions on the line and a little bit of the Ultimates history, I'm not going to have to talk about that anymore. So consider this like part 1 of my Wave 1 reviews. And as I get into Panthro, Jackalman, and Mumm-Ra, I won't be talking so much. So, thanks for watching, and let me know what you think, and have a good one.